Go.
Hello, I'm Randy Barber, and welcome to Let's Talk Education. I'm coming to you live from Ryan Elementary School in Lafayette. Excited about the upcoming return to in-person instruction that's going to be happening here right in these rooms in just less than a week from today. As always, Let's Talk is a place where you get to ask your questions directly to our leadership. We're always going to be talking about the big things that are going on. Quite frankly, we launched the show right in the middle of the pandemic, so pretty much all we've talked about since the beginning is about the pandemic and all of our plans to get back to school and make sure that we're supporting students. I'm going to go and take off the mask. We're trying to get a little bit more used to what this is going to be like with students in our classroom on a daily basis, but where we're going to have masks that are required every day. Today on our panel, we've got some great guests. Want to make sure that I introduce everybody here. But before we do that, I just want to kind of get a high overview of where we're at. As you may know, on Tuesday we had a board meeting in which we had the last presentation, the round 2 presentation from our working advisory group. This is a group of dedicated teachers, principals, parent representatives that worked with Sam Messier, one of our area superintendents, as well as our the Boulder Valley Education Association, to come up with and explore some ideas about how we might be able to return to school safely for our students. So I'm going to bring in Sam first of all, and just have you kind of, why don't you give us a little overview about what was discussed in the meeting, some of the big ideas, and I'm going to try to follow you a little bit by getting into the presentation and giving us some graphics as we go as well. So go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Randy. Yeah, so we are so excited to be able to bring forward recommendations for our kids to be able to return to some in-person learning opportunities at school. So yeah, I will absolutely share the recommendations that the working group has brought forward. We're really excited that K2 will start September 29th. That's Tuesday, in a 4 days per week model. And we will also be starting our students in intensive SPED programs in a 2 day per week model. Unless they're in grades K through 2, then they'll also be 4 days. And our newcomer programs at the secondary will also be allowed to start after September 29th. Our pre-K programs are going to start October 6th in 2 days a week in person. And then we're really hopeful that we can start grades 3, 6, and 9 on October 20th, followed by grades 7 and 8 and 10 through 12, anticipated to start on November 3rd. And then finally working in grades 4 and 5 on November 10th and November 17th. It's really important to note, however, that we're still assessing the feasibility of grades 3 through 12. And that the timelines could change based on the recommendations that we get from our local public health agencies.
And so what we're seeing here is a graph that was put together to kind of showcase that time period and what we're talking about. But again, as you see in there, the color matters in terms of the feasibility, at least on our first look at this of what's, where we might have some barriers. We're going to go on some questions in a couple minutes here in regards to that. But before we get there, I want to go to a slide that's much earlier in the presentation in which we talk about these 4 priorities. At the center of everything that we've been doing, these are the 4 that we're focused on today and at the beginning of this whole thing, right? Sam?
Absolutely. These 4 priorities continue to be what has guided the process from the very beginning. First and foremost is always the health, well-being, and safety of our students as well as our staff. That's our number 1 priority, no matter what the conditions are, whether we're in a pandemic or whether it's normal times. Right after that is about maximizing our students' academic growth and achievement, and very closely behind that, ensuring that our teachers have the support that they need to be able to do their jobs and to help students achieve those high levels of academic growth and achievement. And then, of course, to be able to ensure that we have operational and financial viability, not just in the immediate term, but to be able to sustain that in the long term.
And so one of the things that really has been at top of the conversation as we've been looking at going forward here is that it's not just purely COVID-19 health. Obviously, that is a primary concern. We're, again, in the middle of a pandemic. We want to make sure that people are safe, that we limit the spread of this disease, all those things. But at the same time, we're really looking at, a variety of needs that students have, mental health, et cetera. talk about, I mean, we always say, and I think about during snowstorms, this is the same discussion that we have, that our students depend on our buildings. They need our, our staff members that are supporting them. Why is it so important that we're considering going back in person right now?
Yeah, so many reasons. I think you talked about the about social and emotional well-being, and just that aspect of students being able to connect with peers, to connect with caring adults, to be in a supportive environment that really nurtures them and helps them grow. I remember when I was talking to one parent in one of the empathy interviews that we did, and this is a parent who has a strong relationship with her kids, but she said, my kids benefit so much from when they're in school because they have this whole community of adults at school to nurture them and support them and help them grow. And sometimes those adults are able to provide things or say things in a way that's a little bit different, and students benefit from that. So I think it's this community that creates the sense of belonging, and also just creates this envelope of support around kids that helps them feel safe and helps them develop as human beings. But of course, there are also some real physical needs that we meet at school too. I mean, for some students, it's a warm place to be. It's a place to get a regular, predictable meal. It's a place to access services like mental health supports. So there are all kinds of reasons that getting kids back to school is really important.
I would know we've heard loudly from, high school families, about the social emotional aspect of being in class. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, just like we saw last year with the seniors, there's so many things that they're grieving over, losing by not being in
Mhm.
school and being able to do the activities as well. Excuse me. I'd also like to just kind of talk about, the working advisory group. One of the things that they really looked at, was understanding the situation that we had. They did some empathy interviews. They talked to parents. They talked to students. They tried to get a deeper read on what was going on out there and how people were feeling, and that led us to some decisions. And I know we're a school district that for many years has believed in equity, which is about putting resources specifically to students that really need them. That it's about differentiating your resources to meet the needs of those that need it most. Talk to me a little bit about, that's what it wasn't so much that any student is more important than another. It's really the idea that we have some specific needs around our youngest learners that put K2 first, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I think we're just acknowledging that different groups of kids have different needs, right? So, because equity is about not necessarily doing the same thing for everybody, but doing for everybody what they actually need and responding to that need. And so, for our youngest learners, our kids in grades PK and K1 and 2, they're still developing the skills of just being learners, developing the skills of just how to interact with others in a social environment and how to self regulate, and kind of all those just basic, like how to be a human skills that require a lot of one on one, face to face interaction with a teacher in order to develop. So the online environment is just incredibly challenging for kids in that age group. It's hard for them to maintain a focus just looking at a screen for that period of time. It's hard to maintain focus for these kids sometimes anyway. Regardless of what environment you're in, our teachers are incredibly skilled and talented at being able to do that. But all their skills lie in being able to do that in a in-person, face-to-face environment. It's so much more challenging for our teachers to accomplish that in an environment where they have to interact across the screen.
I know, I received emails that I take seriously from parents that said, by the way that we message this material, that my student, a ninth grader or a senior in high school, that we felt like they were devalued. And I want to be clear that that was not our intent from, communication. I know that wasn't the intent of the committee, but that being said, we do have some logistical challenges that we're trying to overcome. And that means that we don't at this moment have that ability to come back to what we were hoping at the beginning, which was phase three with the hybrid model and all that kind of thing. Can you talk just a little bit about the challenges that we're facing, and again, the fact that every student to us really matters, and that's why we're trying to get everybody back, but it can't all be at once.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think it boils down to sort of like three major variables. that continue to change on us. And as those variables change, we have to keep reassessing what's feasible and what's not. So, one of those variables are the local conditions when it comes to the COVID-19 outbreak. So, we know we've had this recent significant outbreak at the CU Boulder campus. So far, we haven't seen widespread community transmission from that, but that has made us be a little bit more cautious. And I think it's also, made families and staff a little bit more anxious to have this outbreak right in our backyard and wondering, will it spill over into the general community? So we're being a little bit more cautious, and we are really recommending as much social distancing as schools can manage within their environment when we bring our K through 2 students back. But then that causes other issues for us, and that starts to run into the other two variables for us, which are space and the number of staff that we have available. So space is a finite resource. We only have so much of it in each of our buildings, and our buildings vary dramatically in how much space they have available. And then when it comes to staff, that one is really complicated because it's related to a lot of different variables. So certainly part of it is about staff that have requested exemptions or leaves of absence. And I want to be really clear that we really honor the fact that staff who have health conditions that prevent them from being able to work safely in an in-person environment during the COVID pandemic, we want to honor and respect that. And so we have lots of folks who have either themselves or they have a family member who's at high risk and can't safely be in an in-person environment, right? So we're watching that number. We're also watching the number of students whose families have chosen for them to be online versus in person, and that is continually shifting. So really, it's about lining up those three variables, sort of what's going on with the health data, how much space do we have in any given location, and how many staff do we have available to serve the students who want to be in person, and all those things have to line up. And it's super challenging because all three of those, well, the space doesn't change. The other two are changing all the time.
I appreciate it. I mean, I think that's a great foundation for our conversation today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the rest of the panel now. We also, in addition to Sam, in terms of area superintendents, are lucky enough to have Margaret Crespo on the phone with us today. Additionally, Kim Bloman, the Executive Director of Early Childhood Education. We have Dennis Rastetter, the Executive Director of Special Education. We have Stephanie Farron, our Director of Health Services. And last but not least, we've got Rob Price, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Operational Services. Hello, everybody. I so appreciate you guys being here today, and I know we've got a lot of questions that have come in, and so I'm going to get right down to it. Stephanie, I'm going to go off of what Sam was just talking about there, and I know that the CU situation, I was in a meeting today in which they were providing some update in regards to the efforts that are being taken. There's actually, as of today, breaking news, a public health order that's meant to really work with those college students and ensure that they're not gathering. A lot of this was coming out of parties that were going on. And I want to be clear, too, that we really appreciate our partners at the University of Colorado. They do an excellent job. And I know that a lot of students there, they had a student representative that was on the meeting for Boulder today. And, a lot of students are doing the right thing. We don't want to give off the wrong impression here. But we do have a significant surge in cases that are going on at CU right now. I think the question that we got a few questions from parents that came in. And again, I just want to be clear, Boulder County and the University of Colorado are working very closely to address this issue. A question from Rose Latka, mother of a Boulder High School student, asking about the recent rise in COVID positive cases at CU. Jeff Zayak came to our meeting and presented about this before, and he explained, she was asking the question about whether or not all the cases are being documented and what they're watching, and he answered that a little bit. If you could just talk to that and just the fact that there is a significant increase that we're watching right now.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, Randy, I think everybody knows that now. The CU outbreak has determined to be the largest outbreak in Colorado, unfortunately, and it is here in our backyard. Also, like you mentioned, we work really closely with both Boulder County Public Health and Broomfield, and so we're in constant communication with them. Our epidemiological friends that we work with at both agencies have been telling us that what they're seeing right now is that spread really staying within that CU community. Now we know it. We're not in a bubble, or CU's not in a bubble, and we see some of that out into our community as students work and they go to other activities, and some of them have families here and things like that. But it's a very closely watched. The state health department is a part of that now, that investigation, and they share information with us when they get a contact investigation that reflects back that there could be somebody that's working at BVSD or has a student at BVSD, and we share that information with them as well. So it is constant. We are watching it. We're really hoping that this public health order will slow things down and kind of allow people to kind of take a breath and really re-examine what's happening in our community as far as any kind of spread, and not just in CU. But right now, it still looks like CU, is really where the majority of those cases are.
So the idea is that if they're kind of in that pocket, again, there is always some transfer from students into our community. They're visiting restaurants and taking care of kids and that kind of stuff in our community. We want to be aware of that, of course. But the idea that as long as that transmission is mainly happening inside the university, then they believe that it's okay for us to proceed with our plans cautiously.
Absolutely.
And again, that's kind of where the social distancing, as we were announcing the K2 announcement, we talked about full classrooms. We've talked about bringing back social distancing again as we have layers of precautions that we're taking here. I think it's very important to mention. The mask that I was wearing at the beginning is one of those layers, and we'll be asking everybody when they're in classroom with other people to be wearing a mask. We also, we have precautions. I'm actually sitting here. I can maybe move my thing over here. We got a plexiglass situation so that when a teacher is, I don't know if you're able to see that or not, it's clear. So, but the idea that if it's a student and a teacher are working in very close quarters, that ability to stop droplets between them is something that might matter. The idea of washing your hands, there's a sink in this kindergarten classroom. We were going to have those young children and actually everybody trying to do that on a schedule and remembering before they eat and when they come in and out of that classroom and everywhere. It's going to be sort of one of those things that's really ingrained into what we're doing. As we talk about that, again, those are the kinds of things that add some security, just like when we talk about physical security of students. These are the things that help us to protect kids. It's not just one measure. If things improve, that social distancing can be influenced a little bit there, so that we can get more students into our schools as well. It's kind of a give and take a little bit, right?
That's right. I mean, as things improve, then we can relax on some of those protocols that we have in place, as long as we stay within guidelines that are put out by the state and the federal government. I was at Ryan Elementary yesterday, and I think that families are going to really be pretty amazed when they see the job that schools have done between screening before kids get there, having staff and other folks that are working with students really recognize how to help students get to the health office if they're not feeling well. Regular signage, posting, dots everywhere on the floor to help students understand distancing, seating as far as eating. There's so much thought that's gone into this, and like you said, there's just layer upon layer of mitigation strategies, and I think that they're going to do a really good job for us.
I do want to bring in a question from Steve Jones, a parent of an Eisenhower fourth grader, who asked that, how do we choose to ignore this outbreak, is the words that he used, when it's completely related and even predictive of what will happen with BVSD students. I know that one of the things that we've talked about and really been looking at is, first of all, we have our child care programs that have been operating actually since the beginning, even when we were in stay-at-home order. Additionally, and they've been going through, and we've had more students join as that time has gone on. There have been no cases of COVID in there, and they've been taking preventive actions there. Additionally, we're looking at other school districts, and they have the same kind of protocols. So you may hear them in the news go on and off of quarantine, or at times, depending on the amount of the group. I'm thinking about high school students where they had large cohorts. They were closing down the high school because of that, or because maybe a teacher touched multiple cohorts too. That's always kind of an issue. But the difference between a cohort being placed on on a preemptive quarantine and actual spread of disease. Those are two different things, and we're not seeing a lot of spread among students inside of Colorado in the schools that have open. Is that accurate?
That's right, and we're not seeing a lot of spread in most of the schools that have gone back. Like you mentioned, Randy, there are lots and lots of kids who are going out on quarantine, but those kids aren't getting sick, and that's one of the reasons why we have cohorts set up and very specific groups of students staying together, so that we can really limit and identify immediately who might be sick and keep them at home until we're sure that everybody's fine, and then bring them back. And we have the systems already in place to do that remote home learning, so it's a pretty seamless change, hopefully, for folks having to move back and forth.
One other question from Sean Wilcox, the father of a Boulder High School sophomore, asked about the district moving forward and how he was worried about us putting children at risk because they could contract a disease that might have long-lasting effects, and we want to protect them against anything like that. They want to keep their child safe. Again, the idea that all of our parents are most certainly welcome to keep their kids safe. This is a very difficult time. We are in the middle of a pandemic. I can't say that enough times. We're with you. The safest thing that is definitely possible to do is stay at home and keep complete social distance from other people. That being said, as Sam talked about, we are trying to balance a number of different needs that our students have. But also, I think to that question, I think the question I have for you, Stephanie, is, as we're getting more information about this disease too, it's giving us a better picture of how it impacts our small children. It's not something that we don't take seriously because, again, they might have impact on older generations that they know and see. But for the kids themselves, it doesn't seem to be impacting them as heavily. Am I getting that accurate?
I would say that what we know right now is that it doesn't appear that younger children are getting as ill as older folks are. They're not being hospitalized as much. There is still a lot of data to come out on what the impacts might be long term, like you mentioned, and they are seeing some impacts in adolescents and younger adults that can stick around for a long time. So we're just not sure about that yet. We haven't had the time to follow that, unfortunately.
And I think that's a really good point. And I don't want to act as if we don't. This is very serious. Again, it's a disease that is it's novel. I think is the word that they use for it, right? That we haven't seen before. So there's not a vaccine. There's some things that we are still learning about it for sure.
Right. It's a very personal decision, right? To bring your student back to school or to keep them home, and we understand that everybody has to make that decision for their family, what's best for them.
And honestly, even the mention that I just made of a vaccination, that is another thing in our community, very personal decision on whether or not people are planning on participating on that if that becomes available. So definitely want to recognize all those things as we're talking here. Again, trying to strike that balance is very tough. Okay, so one of the things that we thought we'd try to do today with our special guest is walk through kind of by age what we're expecting to see as students start to come back, and also these challenges that we're facing at certain levels. We've gotten a good number of questions, and since I'm sitting here in a kindergarten classroom, I think it makes sense for us to talk about early childhood first and what's going on there. I know that our kindergartners, a classroom that's here, will be returning with the K2 students next Tuesday. So this classroom and others in our school district will have students next week. And then October 6th is when we expect preschoolers to come back. Is that right, Kim?
Correct. Yep. K2 will be back next Tuesday, and the Tuesday after preschool.
Now, I know, again, since I'm in this classroom, I feel like I might as well use some props, right? So these teachers have really kind of been thinking about the situation. That this is a cushion, and they've got this awesome, every student will have their own sort of desk unit. And the idea this is breaking television news here. We're going to try to walk across the room here. You can kind of see that the idea is to spread them out on the floor, and that as we're moving things around, that we can keep that distance between the kids. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing here?
Yeah, I was just going to say that lovely little, the cushion you showed, we call that a wiggle seat, because little people, they like to wiggle around, and it's a great sensory experience for them. So we call that a wiggle seat. You'll see they've got, kind of, you can't really see from where you're at, but they have, all the teachers have their learning centers, their dramatic play, their blocks, their manipulatives, with puzzles and books. We've been very strategic about what goes out in the environment because we also recognize that we need to be cleaning and sanitizing everything at the end of the day so that the environment is prepared for the next day. But our early childhood team and also the operations team under Stephanie Schroeder have been working really hard to put plans together for teachers to help them set up those learning environments.
I know Rob Price will not let me forget to talk to him about furniture later in this conversation, because I think you just brought up something that was brought up by the Ryan folks yesterday when we were on our tour with board member Stacey Ziss, and I would love to talk to you about that, Rob. But let me ask a question that we get about preschool before we move on here. A parent, Tess Pace, she's a parent of a preschooler as well as a third and fourth grader, asked, can you please address the probability that preschool students would be able to return 4 days a week? So right now we have preschool like 2 days a week?
Yep, 2 days in person and 2 days home learning.
Okay, and talk about how about we'll look a little bit, and then again, kind of the challenges that we face about bringing kids back full time for that group.
Yeah, Tess has a great question, and it's a popular question. The ECE team would absolutely love to bring preschoolers back 4 days a week, but we have run into a few operational logistical challenges. Currently, our preschool program, our community liaisons have been working around the clock, calling our families and surveying them. About 34% of our families want home learning only. And kind of back to what Stephanie had shared, we really are allowing this to be a personalized decision for that family. So based on that need, the preschool program really needs to be able to provide in-person and home learning options. And this is a heavy lift with the available staffing resources that we have. So that is why we decided to move to a hybrid model, which is 2 days of in-person and 2 days of seesaw home learning activities that the teacher has built into their online learning management system, as well as our community liaisons are reaching out and providing family connections and support with families all week long. Our district doesn't have a BU K-12 option for online learning only. Many families may not know this, but our preschool teachers are early childhood special ed endorsed teachers, and they have a very unique endorsement. And so we really can't just move that online program over to Boulder Universal. And so our teaching team, along with the early childhood education leadership team, have been working really closely to develop a plan with our teachers and our paraeducators, because both the teacher and the preschool paraeducator will be working in that classroom with groups of 8 students. They will be providing home learning and in-person learning opportunities with students. And I think the machine you have in the background there, the Revis, if you want to point that out, when families have home
Pick the camera just so that they can see it. This is the camera system that IT has helped put into our classrooms across the district.
Yeah, and our preschool team is using it. So when families are participating in their home learning days, they'll not only have all these incredible developmentally appropriate activities inside Seesaw, but they'll actually be able to go in and observe and participate in small group or a whole group learning opportunity on their home learning days. So they'll come 2 days in person, and then they'll have their home learning days. So we're pretty excited about it. We know it's going to be new technology for everyone, but our team is really prepared and ready to support families. And what I would say to Tess and any family who's thinking about this, we'll continue to monitor the situation and staffing levels and the number of families who want their children in person versus remote learning, and see if in the future we could move to a 4-day-a-week preschool program. I do want preschool families to know that we have set up incredible systems and our environments are safe. And as you shared earlier, our child care program has been successfully doing this since March, and we haven't had any outbreaks. So I think once families get into the routine, they're going to find that it's going to go really well. So we're excited to have them back.
Thank you, Kim. I know that this is sort of the daily double of questions. Tess gets a second question. She asked also, what's the plan for supporting PK-12 or PK students with IEPs or developmental delays? They're desperate for in-person learning. They're not responding to virtual learning. I know that we've heard this, beyond PK. Kim, I don't know if you have anything that you want to say specifically about the preschool students, but I also would love to have Dennis, add in his part on that too.
I do. Our preschool teachers have been actively preparing for all students' return and ensuring that we're meeting their goals and objectives while providing resources at home. The fact that preschool is coming back to smaller groups of 8 with 2 preschool staff plus special education providers in the classroom, it's really going to allow for more targeted small group instruction to support students with who need additional support. Plus, our teachers have been working around the clock. I am actually in awe of these teachers, how hard they've been working and the cool things that they have created for families. But I mean, social stories, daily visual schedules, if-then boards, games, work baskets, all focused on students' individual needs. They have been delivering those materials. They have been sending them in the mail. Now when students come for their 2 days in person, they'll be able to take their home learning materials home so they're ready for the other 2 days of the week. I really think families are going to find that very targeted small group instruction is really going to be powerful.
Awesome. Dennis, what else do you want to share about that? And I know, again, this is something that we're working across the board for all of our students on.
Yeah, absolutely. So much of what Kim said for the pre-K programming applies to our special education program, our intensive levels of programming where students will be returning on Tuesday. So just to give a broad summary as a reminder, students in K2 in our intensive programs will be returning 4 days a week, just like their general ed peers will. So they'll be able to access both special education services and access to their general education peers, which is our ultimate goal in special education. For those students who are returning in grades 3-12, similar to what Kim said, they'll be brought back in 2 days a week where the cohort groups of kids will be smaller so that we will be able to provide more intensive, direct support to each and every one of those students because they'll be with smaller groups of students. Additionally, to that specialized instruction through special ed, which will be the focus of those in-person learning opportunities, is really to work on those IEP goals and objectives. But in addition to that, our staff will be working to provide that access and support for those students who are accessing their general education classes online as well, or virtually. So we're excited, thrilled to have our students in our most intensive programs back in-person learning, and we look forward to seeing them all on Tuesday.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. So, talking about the K2 return, we'll kind of keep moving up the grade levels here. We are, as I said, on Tuesday, we'll be bringing back several groups, including those kindergarten through second grade students. We did get a question from Molly Nunnery. She's a parent of a Birch first grader that asked about the recommendation. So we started talking about this, Stephanie, about the social distancing and the idea of we have a classroom full of 22, 27. I don't know what exactly the limits are in this kind of classroom, but of those kind of students. As we put social distancing in place, we're going to see. I think the idea is that they could be spread out in different places. Sam or Margaret, do you want to talk about what that might look like in a school, and sort of how that might differ, between facilities as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can start, and then Margaret can I'm sure pick it up. So our facilities do vary. So of course, our classroom sizes do vary from school to school. So if you imagine that on one end of the spectrum, if we have a large classroom and we have a relatively small class size because a lot of students have opted for online learning instead of in person, like say we've got only 15 kids in a particular class in a pretty big classroom, then their day is probably going to look like it normally would have, right? They're going to be in that classroom with their teacher, but they're going to need to try to stay 6 feet apart as much as they possibly can. Throughout the course of that day. Now, we know that's not going to be perfect. We know it's not going to happen 100% of the time. It's a recommendation. It's not a hard and fast rule. Now, imagine the other side of the spectrum where you've got maybe a very small classroom full of second graders, and you've got 29 kids, which is the class limit at second grade. So in that case, it might be really difficult or impossible for those kids to all be in the same room and be able to be 6 feet apart for most of the day. So in that case, what we're doing is we're providing some additional staff to those schools so that they can break their students out and rotate their students through different instructional experiences in different spaces. So for the really intensive instructional experiences with their teacher, they'd be with their teacher, but maybe for independent work time or for time that they're working on a group project together, they might be in a different space with another adult who's able to provide supervision and support. Margaret, I don't know what you might want to add to that.
Thanks, Sam. And I would just say that I think for parents that love their schools, our principals have done an incredible job with staff and teachers to make sure that both of those scenarios based on the class sizes have been covered and that students really feel that space and that distance in a safe, loving environment, and really excited to just get our kids back next week. And Sam, I think you did a great job covering both those extremes, and that's definitely what we're planning for.
I know that walking around this school and the other schools that I've been at, to the point that was just made, that our teachers are working extremely hard. One of the things that was brought to my attention, and I won't forget, Rob, here we go, furniture. So when you walk around the school like this, in a classroom like this, it actually still feels pretty normal classroom. But what is totally interesting to hear from the staff here is that they've removed a good amount of furniture. And some of those things include big fluffy couches, things that are fabric that would be tougher to clean. But there was a lot of extra stuff in these rooms, and this isn't even, this school was is more on the innovative side of things. I think in terms of like the desks were more like, not the old school desks, but more like the table together, right? Talk to me about, I mean, that was something that has been going across the whole school district of people sort of bringing that extra furniture, those extra bookshelves, anything to gain more space here, right?
Yeah, what you're seeing at Ryan Elementary School is, of course, what we're seeing across the district. Teachers have been working directly with custodial staff. What you're seeing in Ryan right behind you, they went through and they've removed all their, what I would call non-essential furniture, right? Just to allow kids to spread out, give us more space in that classroom. As Sam talked about, the guidance that we've received, is anywhere from 3 to 6 feet. But we're trying to provide as much space as we can in this classroom. So, a lot of work that has taken place to the credit of our teachers and our custodial staff is what you don't see is all the tables that are broken down. And what that also does is allow us to concentrate on the other highly touched surfaces, right? So we're not trying to clean a cloth couch or tables that aren't being used, et cetera. So it really helps us both on the operations side and helps us on the health side, just giving us more rooms in those spaces.
Your team, I know, just normally, if we weren't in a pandemic, is working on the idea of air quality. And we've had, situations at certain schools. One of those things is this furniture that's oftentimes brought in from outside, available through a garage sale or, leftover couch from somebody's house or whatever. It makes the learning environment more plush and enjoyable for a kid to read their book and that kind of stuff. And I don't want to take away from that. That kind of furniture, beanbag chairs, and that kind of thing are important. But a certain amount of that is also problematic in a classroom in terms of the air quality.
It is, but from when we're in the middle of pandemic, we got to be able to clean it, Randy. And what you're seeing behind you, some of our vinyl furniture, we're allowing it to stay in there because we can clean and disinfect it each night. But we're finding with our cloth materials, we just can't do that. We can't keep up with the cleaning demand. With our indoor air quality study, I'll talk about that, which Dr. Richard Shaughnessy and the University of Tulsa led us through that. A lot of our students that are asthmatic, we find that the dust and stuff settles into those cloth couches. So I think this has even given us a great opportunity to remove some of those as we've been learning more and more about indoor air quality through the district. So that study has led us to a lot of good information, reduced absenteeism. I think some of that other stuff we'll start seeing as we're proceeding through the district.
Another question, which I know you're answering a lot these days, which is about ventilation. We're lucky enough in this community to have some local experts at the University of Colorado, and honestly, it's a question in all school districts across the nation. How much that air is moving through. The studies have shown that the more the air moves, the less likely those particles stay. The aerosol stays up in the air. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, again, Dr. Richard Shaughnessy, University of Tulsa. We've hired a consultant, McKinstry. And, just as soon as today, my team met with the University of Colorado. We've been working on this for the past 4 months, right? So once we got back into the schools in May, our team has been going through just doing preventative maintenance on our systems. When I say preventative maintenance, changing out filters, changing out belts, making sure the systems operate as they're supposed to. So as more and more guidance has been received, right, ASHRAE has issued some information, University of Harvard has issued information, Boulder County Public Health has gave us information, University of Colorado has done their aerosol studies, but what you want to do is bring 100% of fresh air when temperature allows, really to dilute that air, as you mentioned. I mean, if there's anything in the air, we're just trying to make it safe. So we start our systems 2 hours before students come into the building, and then those systems, and when they start 2 hours early, we're flushing those buildings out. And then when everyone is out of the building, we run the systems for 2 additional hours to flush those systems. We have also put air purifiers in our isolation rooms and health rooms. And then we're monitoring the indoor air quality through carbon dioxide checks. So we have a building automation system that alerts us if carbon dioxide gets too high in a particular space. Then we can react accordingly. And what that tells us is that space, we're not getting enough fresh air into it. So carbon dioxide levels exceed in times of 1,100 parts per million. So a lot of information that is by far the number one question that I get asked. I will say, if you want to know more about our ventilation plan, there's a lot of great information on our bbsd.org website. Please visit that. We have a full plan on there. But again, thank you for the question, Randy, and still the number one question.
I think that's in the health protocol section of our reintroduction plan, which is bbsd.org/reintroduction. Another question that we got from parent was more on the technology side. I know Andrew Moore isn't with us today, but I think it's probably a general enough question that somebody can answer for us. The idea that, and again, this came from Julie Turek, I think. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. She's got some students over at Bear Creek, including a preschooler, second grader, and fourth grader. She asked, when children in school, they get to keep the Chromebooks that they have. So they've been using them for remote study. If, them coming in and out, the fact that we might have to keep kids home, that idea that remote learning is going to be a part of this, a baseline of what we're doing, is absolutely the truth. Who can talk about, the expectation is that the equipment that they have today will be continuing to be used throughout the whole school year on Monday lunch days, et cetera, right?
I can take that one, Randy. So yes, the systems will be the same. The only change that we would perceive is if a student needed a new one, if it were broken and it needed to be repaired, or it was a new one that was being traded out. Our expectation is that our students, similar to a lot of the personal manipulatives that we're talking about for classrooms, those would remain the same as their Chromebooks. And what we would ask, certainly the same as the practices that we're doing, make sure that we're cleaning them up, washing our hands when we use them, and things like that at home as well as in school. So that we're practicing for our kids coming in next week. And if there is a change because there's an update based on supply chain updates or computers need to be updated, we definitely would communicate with families so that they're aware of what that shift would look like. And we would like the students to let us know. And certainly, as we all know, we have IT Prime. So if there is an issue or there's a concern around technology, please don't hesitate to reach out so that we can make sure that our students are ready and available for learning remotely as well as face-to-face in school.
Thanks, Margaret. I really appreciate that. I'm okay. We're going to keep moving on up the scale here, up the grades, up to upper elementary. I know that there's been a lot of concern in regards to the upper elementary grades. They are not included in this first group that will be starting on Tuesday. The recommended timeline from the working advisory group suggested a staggered return of third, fourth, and fifth graders starting in October. I know that our effort has been to be as open and transparent as possible. And so in our presentation and in the letter that went out there, we did talk about the feasibility, and Sam mentioned that at the beginning of the show. A couple of the questions that we got that we'd love to kind of dive into a little bit is a question from Corey Rosella, a parent of a Superior Elementary fifth grader, who asked, why are fifth graders the last to go back to school? It's devastating for my child's mental health. It's shocking that middle and high schoolers get to go back a month before fifth graders even considered. We've had some other questions in regards to the plan. Let's see here. Chris, a parent of a Fireside fourth grader, who says that just because it's not a transition year, is it possible that we can get 3 through 5 grades back. Sam, do you want to take that on a little bit? Again, we were trying to figure out, given the situation, we have some social distancing that's happening immediately that we're hoping will lessen over time. Additionally, with the amount of resources we've got. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and first I want to say, like, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a fifth grader or a fourth grader or the parent of a child in one of those grades and be struggling right now with the news of not being able to go back right away and it potentially being several weeks before they get to be back in person, and even wondering if it's going to happen at all, if we can make it feasible or not. I'm sure that that's absolutely heart-wrenching. And we are all committed to trying to get all of our kids back in person as fast, as soon as we can, as long as it's safe. We're going to do whatever we can to make that happen. But there are some constraints that we're facing, and it's the same three that I talked about at the beginning. So as the health data changes, that impacts that'll impact how, to what degree we'll have to social distance within the classroom. The more social distancing we have to do, the more space we have to take up in the building. And space being that other variable, right? So some buildings have a lot more space than others. And then, of course, staff that are available to be in person to supervise children is one of the other variables. And as I talked about before, with two of those variables changing all the time, which is the amount of staff that we have available in relationship to the number of students who've chosen in person, and also the health conditions changing, it makes it really difficult to forecast multiple weeks in advance about what the feasibility of things is going to be. So we will make every effort to get our third, fourth, and fifth graders back. But we also want to be realistic and be transparent, as you said, with our community, that there are feasibility concerns.
Again, very, very important to us that we get them back. Another question that we got from Jennifer Neal, a parent of a student at Monarch PK8, was, why are we trying to send 3 through 5 back 4 days a week? We talked about the fact that that we're not doing that until November. Why not look at doing that in a hybrid model instead, in order to make that easier to make a possibility? Again, even if it's just 2 days a week, they'd love to have that. Again, kind of same restraints, or is it easier if it goes down to a hybrid model?
I think that your space constraint becomes easier to manage if you go to a hybrid model, for sure. You still need the staff, though, because those teachers are still teaching kids in person 4 days a week. It's just that they have half of them at any one given time. So the staff constraint is still a very real constraint for us, whether we're in a hybrid model or whether we're in a 4 days in person model. But space does become easier for us in a hybrid model. I will say that the committee considered that, and actually the working advisory group talked about the hybrid 2-day model versus the 4-day, and the very strong preference was to try to make 4 days work.
Okay, appreciate that. Let's move to secondary now. Take a look at a couple questions from parents there. Shaw McMiniman, a parent of a Centaurus 9th and 11th grader, starts by saying, "I'm very confused. When will my kids be going back to school, and how many days per week?" I understand, given the amount of communication that we've had and the options and all that kind of thing. At the high school level, we're really talking about 9th and the transition years going first, and then the remainder of folks coming back a little bit later, and then both secondary, both middle schools and high schools would be 1 day a week. Is that correct?
That's the recommendation from the working advisory group. And again, pending feasibility, but the recommendation was for 1 day a week. I think recognizing that students in that age range are a little bit more independent as learners and able to function more effectively in the online and remote environment, but that they still really benefit from the value of that interaction with their peers and the one-to-one in-person interaction with their teachers. So that if that could happen 1 day a week, that would reduce the number of students that we'd have in the building at any one given time. Our most crowded buildings, probably our 2 most crowded buildings, are 2 of our high schools. And so trying to minimize the number of students that we have in the building at any one time is something that the working group was trying to achieve with that 1 day a week recommendation.
I know that 1 day a week rotation did bring a lot of attention on social media, a lot of comments and questions about, what, will be worthwhile on, just a single day a week. A couple other questions that we got. Philippa, she's got an 8th grade student, asked 4-day rotation. Why is that a possibility for secondary students? So I think you started kind of addressing that. At the high school level, the idea that, so again, you were kind of touching based on the spacing available in the school, but it's also complex because of the number of courses. And that's part of the reason why we went to a 4-block system this time around, to try to give us some flexibility there. Because when you've got kids moving between 8 classes, but still pretty difficult with 4 classes with all those kids. So you have to have kind of a health environment that would provide that ability to have that many kids moving around. Am I going down the right track here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the educational experience looks completely different structurally at secondary, right? Because you do have kids that, every kid potentially has a completely different schedule of courses that they're taking during the course of the day. And we want kids to be able to continue to take the courses that they signed up for. Unlike in an elementary school where the kids stay together with one teacher in one class for the entire day, at secondary, they're changing their teacher 3 times throughout the course of the day. And that means that, we have more potential for cross-contamination among those groups. And so being able to have fewer kids in the building is helpful from a public health and disease mitigation standpoint.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the right question here. The idea of, I'm just going to punt from my questions and just ask the question that's in my mind, which is the idea that I know that we got some questions in regards to maybe giving certain groups even more capability to be in there, like seniors, maybe bringing them up with a transition year, that kind of thing. Any sort of thoughts in regards to if that might be possible as we're considering feasibility?
Is that possible? I think that it's possible. It's within the realm of possibility. When the working group was thinking about the recommendations about which grade levels to bring back first, I think part of the rationale that they were really focusing on the 6th and the 9th graders is that those kids haven't even been able to make a physical attachment to their school yet. They've never been physically in their school, potentially. They haven't made connections with their teachers in person. And some of them don't even know what it's like to be in middle school versus elementary, or to be in high school versus middle school. So helping those kids get connected to their school is such a high priority for us. We know that, for example, if we have a 9th grader who feels disconnected and disengaged from school and is potentially failing 1 or more classes, then they're at a much higher risk to drop out. So what we're hoping to do is ensure that these kids get attached to and engaged with school right from the very beginning. And that's the reason that we've really put a high priority on those transition year students.
Okay, I appreciate that. Wendy Schwartz asked the question, if 6th and 9th graders were returning, it's about the cohorts. All the students have been attached to cohorts. Will those still be what's sort of working there? I guess maybe even a better picture of, what will this look like? And they're going to, since it's 4 days a week, I know another parent had asked, when will we know? Amanda Dorish, a Southern Hills 6th grade parent, asked, if it's 1 day a week for middle school students, when will we learn which day they're on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wish I could tell Amanda exactly when she will know the answer to that. I think that we've still got some things to work out. Conceptually, what we're imagining and what we were recommending is that half of cohort A would go on Tuesday and the other half would go on Wednesday, and half of cohort B would go on Thursday and the other half would go on Friday. We still have some things to work out to be able to make that work.
Okay. And I know a lot of people are struggling with the idea, and I get this all the time on social media. They're comparing us to our next door neighbors, or they're comparing us to the other school districts across the state. We do have, as you said, those 3 challenges that we're dealing with that do put us in a slightly different spot. Obviously, we're looking at our neighbors. We know what they're working on. What would you want to say to these parents that are making these comparisons?
I would say first that every community is unique and every community is different. And one of the things that's unique about Boulder Valley right now is that we have this major outbreak on the CU Boulder campus that's happening right in our backyard. That presents some unique challenges to us. Not insurmountable challenges, but certainly some challenges. It doesn't mean that we can't get our kids back to school in person. Our health department hasn't said that we can't do that. But I think it has raised the level of anxiety and concern for both families and for staff. And so that just makes everybody, I think, in a position where we're being extra cautious, making sure that we're taking all the safety precautions that we can. I think that's the big difference that really stands out to me. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add on that one.
Okay. Margaret, do you have something that you want to add there?
I was just going to add that in general, I think that our monitoring and our communication with Boulder County Health and our neighboring districts is ongoing, and the recognition of the flexibility that's needed based on your singularity in your community and what that looks like in those impacted areas. And super grateful for the relationships that we have, not only with the districts, but with the departments. And then I just wanted to add that very quickly, I do think that the cohorting that we've tried to do around the AB model.
Nope. I think we might have lost Margaret there.
Same group.
Oh, Margaret, we lost you. You just started
Yeah.
talking about the cohorting. How is that going to work?
Yep, I just wanted to add that one of the things that we're really working on is trying to keep siblings together. I know that that's come up a couple of times around the flexibility for families, and we just want them to know that definitely that sibling piece will still remain together as much as possible, so that your 6th and 7th grader would be on the same day coming from the same household. That's a priority and always has been.
Awesome. I before sort of paraphrase some of the questions that we've gotten, and I won't belabor it too much longer, but Jean de la Marta had been the one that had brought up the 12th grade transition year thing, saying, I believe seniors are going through major life transitions and would benefit from being around their peers, teachers, counselors sooner rather than later. So I know that we hear that, and we definitely are considerate of that. Our counselors are definitely working with our seniors to make sure that they continue to be juniors and seniors to be prepared for their college transitions and for what needs to happen in terms of testing and all those kind of things that are definitely flexing at this time. Let's see here. Additionally, we did get a question we've gotten a few of these questions along these lines. Debbie Brinkley asked, she's a parent of a Fairview senior that wants to know why athletics was allowed to start prior to students getting back to the classroom. I know that especially with the focus that's been going on around the state with football right now, that's been something that's been brought up a few times. And also another message that we just got into the box a few minutes ago was about the idea that there are also large group performances planned for choir, and I think in their outdoor facilities and that kind of thing. Kind of talk about, I don't know, Margaret, if you want to touch back on this kind of idea, but first of all, athletic practices started way back in the summer. They actually gave us some really helpful insight into how we would run our school programs, including passive screening, but maybe a little bit more thought into the timing and how this has all kind of worked.
Sure, and I think Sam can jump in after if I miss anything. I would say that you're absolutely right, Randy. Starting in the summer, we had a lot of opportunity to practice and really hone our skills on how we would bring students back. A lot of guidance around what that separation would look like. Again, it was outdoors, so it was fun to see many of our students and our performers outside with appropriate distance practicing. That's one of the key factors that we've been able to launch. Similar to what you said related to our childcare, right? We were able to do essential care and again learn so much from that experience. And really the impact for us was around getting students back in school in smaller spaces with health orders that really wouldn't have been functional for students to be able to come back safely. And as we've said, safety is always our #1 priority for our teachers and our students and our families. And although it does seem a little bit incongruent to have the students practicing and doing those athletic programs, the reality is that it's what was allowable at the time and definitely gave us an incredible opportunity to learn and perfect what we're doing. And we continue to enhance through those practices. I don't know if Sam or Stephanie want to throw anything in there.
I don't see anybody raising their hand, so I'm going to keep moving forward. I know we're about at the hour. I'm going to keep going because I think we've got some good questions in here. Just want to make sure that we answer as many as we can quickly. Newcomers, I know a lot of folks were a little confused, may not have heard that program before. We had a question from a parent of a junior in high school who asked, his kid is new at Boulder High School. Does that mean that that they get to start soon? Additionally, Aurora, another high school junior, asked that they're moving in from Kansas and wanted to know if this only applied to foreign students. I believe the newcomer program is specifically oriented to students that don't speak English and are brand new to the country, may not have been in kind of an American education system before. Is that right?
I'm so tempted to make a joke about Kansas feeling like a foreign country sometimes, but yeah. So
my inbox.
the newcomer program is specifically exactly, Randy, for those students who are moving to the United States from another country and who are also learning English as an additional language.
Okay, thank you. Remote learning, a lot of questions in this arena, specifically about whether or not students will be allowed to continue and what the impact will be. The answer is absolutely we are allowed, that will be a key part of how we continue to educate students. Again, there are going to be situations in which students that are in person have to be remote, but that if you don't feel comfortable, that that is definitely an option. The next kind of stage of that becomes the kind of question that we got from Christy Younglin. She's the mother of a student at Cole Elementary and Broomfield Heights Elementary Middle School. Sorry, she said, "Will her student be allowed to remain home all 5 days? Will she get to keep the same current teachers if they stay home?" Similarly, we had another question from a parent at Foothill Elementary, a third grader. If her son opts out of in-person learning, what will happen is the rest of the third graders start in-person learning. Can he still meet with the same teachers, keep the same schedule as now? A lot of questions in regards to how this will impact their classroom teacher. I think you can kind of get a trend here that it really does matter from class to class and school to school, because different schools may handle this differently. Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about what this might look like?
Sure. Yeah. I think that, we know how disruptive it can be, especially for our younger kids. If they've been with a teacher now for, 3 or 4 weeks in the school year, and then they have to change to a different teacher and they're a kindergartner, that can be incredibly disruptive. And we try to avoid doing that if we can avoid doing that. But there may be cases where if a student decides that, or if a family decides to keep their child home and moves them from an in-person selection to being online only, we may have to change their teacher. And we don't want to do that. It's something that we would only do as a last resort, but that is possible, and it probably will happen in some cases. So I would advise that parent to reach out to their principal to talk about their specific situation and what's likely to happen in that case.
Thank you, Sam. Josh Nims, a parent of an 8th grader, wrote, needs a little refresher in regards to how to opt in or out of in-person learning. Didn't choose Boulder Universal, but wants to know if it's still an option. The basic gist of it is that students that wanted to go to Boulder Universal, that's already happened. That was an open enrollment sort of situation before the semester began. Now, again, students have the ability. We, up to this last Tuesday, we're collecting opt-outs just to give us a better idea of what students were in and out of the classroom. But again, we expect that this is going to be a day-to-day. As students are sick, they're going to have to stay home. So you're going to use your normal attendance things to let us know that. If you don't feel comfortable, then you're going to want to talk to your school. The opt-in is a little bit trickier. Margaret, I don't know if you want to talk to this, but the idea that because we are really trying to we're starting small and hoping to grow from that, we needed to know to Sam's point, all these factors are important. How many students are expecting to come back was one of those key numbers. And so we started with who was in our opt-in part and went with that. If they want to if you're opt out and you want to opt back in, we're asking people to work with their schools on that, right?
Yes, we're asking them to work directly with their schools. Similar to what Sam said, a lot of it is going to be related to the space that's available at the time based on our distancing and our staffing. I know that there have been a number of parents who have reached out to principals, and definitely working with your school principal who knows their building the best is able to give you a better perspective around where the status is. And just please understand that it may be a short term and may be able to make adjustments as they go, but much of it is going to be dependent on the cohort size, the group that's coming in at the time, and the staffing available for in-person learning.
Thank you. One last question in this arena. A question from Cheryl Morrison that asks, why can't BVSD have teachers that are exemptions kind of work across schools? I know that we have most certainly worked with exempted teachers, in some cases moving them to Boulder Universal to support that. The idea that we're trying to be flexible with the resources that we have. Sam, do you want to kind of talk about that kind of question?
Yeah, that's actually something that we've considered as an option, because that might allow us some more flexibility and more ability to make grades 3, 4, and 5 feasible. On the downside, moving teachers from one school to another, or for having them cover kids from a different school, would require us to change those students' teachers, and that is something that we know can be disruptive and difficult for families. So it's really balancing those two things to decide what ultimately can serve the most students in the best way.
Okay, awesome, Sam. Thank you. We talked in our last show about outdoor learning. Those protocols have now been put together. We got a question from Molly Morrow, the mother of an Angela, 8th grader. What is the possibility of outdoor school starting in less than a week? Can we expect to plan more information? She said that this gives her so much hope for her 6th grader. I'm anxious to learn more. I know that previously one of our senior parents talked about, is there any possibility of maybe putting some more emphasis on giving seniors that opportunity? Again, and we hate to say it this way, we're very, school autonomous. That's not the best way to say that, but our schools have a lot of ability to make plans based on their needs and their communities. A lot of this is up in their hands. But Rob, do you want to talk about those guidelines and sort of what this might look like?
Yeah, Randy, right now we know transmission numbers are just lower outside. So we are highly encouraging everyone, when instruction allows and when weather allows, to move outside. So we've got a lot of space on our school grounds. When you're starting to think about this, we're asking teachers to limit group sizes to less than 30. Students, if they're practicing social distancing of 6 feet, they can take their masks off. Teachers, we are asking that staff continue to wear their masks. When we're thinking about the screening process, everybody, of course, will be required to screen themselves prior to, just like they would at any normal day. And then transportation is kind of a hurdle here, and we understand it's a barrier, and we're still working on that. But right now, transportation will not be provided for outside learning or outdoor learning for grades 3 through 12 right now. So that's what we're still working on. But there's a lot of good information, again, that we've distributed to schools. That's a high-level overview, Randy, on what our health precautions are. A lot of thought that goes into, what if we have wildlife on a site? What do we do? If somebody needs to use a restroom or fill their water bottle, we put all those plans in place.
Excellent. Yeah, we've gotten a lot of questions in regards to the security aspect of things. Same protocols snap right into place. Safety of our students is top priority in that case. We got a question from a mother, Juanita, a mother of a Centaurus 11th grader, who asked, how will teachers teach both outside and remotely? Again, it's quite possible that we'll have some teachers that will try to take on the idea of bringing the Rebus outside, but oftentimes these aren't going to be during the normal classroom periods. They might be extras. Am I getting that right, Sam? Or I might be this is really kind of open to the innovation of a teacher and what they might have in mind, right?
Yeah, and we have some amazingly innovative and creative teachers who are able to pull off some incredible stuff. So I would not put it past any of our teachers to be able to pull that off, to be able to simultaneously be outdoors doing some fabulous experience and streaming it live to students who can't be there. I'm sure we've got that kind of talent in our district to make that happen. But in general, what the guidance that we're giving teachers is that because we're not able to provide transportation for students to access outdoor learning, if they're scheduling it during the school day, they need to provide some kind of alternative activity for students who aren't able to attend in person. So we do expect there to be some kind of alternative activity. It may not be, and in most cases probably won't be, synchronous online. It would probably be some kind of asynchronously delivered activity. But we encourage our schools to be scheduling some things that are before or after school as those work out for schools in their schedules and are feasible for them.
I know that we've got a question about transportation, so I'm going to transition to there, but that does bring up an important question that for these outdoor situations, at this point, we're really not able to provide busing for students or that kind of support. And so that's something that they're going to have to kind of keep in mind, right?
Yeah, Randy, are you talking about just in general?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
let me-
it's just not something that is feasible right now for us to be able to offer transportation to kids that might have an outdoor opportunity, right?
That's correct. But I want to talk, just to make sure it's really clear, those are for the students, let's say 3 through 12, for outdoor learning. I do want to make it clear, transportation is provided for transportation eligible K through 2 students that have opted in. And I think that is an important piece come Tuesday. So if you did not opt in, and if you get into Infinite Campus and you don't have your bus stops and times in Infinite Campus, then please don't show up to the bus stop, because right now we have assigned seats, and I think that is a critical piece. If you do not, or if you have not signed up for or opted into transportation, please call the transportation department if you need transportation. We will see if we have space available. I do want to make sure also it's clear that we are providing transportation for those that have transportation in their IEP. So, and that is grades K through 12 and for our preschool students. And again, anybody that's starting school on Tuesday should be able to get an Infinite Campus. Bus stops and times should be in there. If they're not, and you feel like you've opted in, you've completed the process, again, please call the transportation department.
And Autumn Whalen, a parent of Flatirons and Boulder High School students, Casey as well, asked, will there be transportation for mountain families? That would be included in there?
Yes, so those families that may live up in the mountains that come back down to say that an elementary school such as Flatirons, and for Netherlands schools, transportation will be provided for the grade levels I just identified.
Okay, awesome. We got a great question, and in fact, a couple today on the same topic, and so it's so interesting, and I believe that there's even communication that's going out to certain families around this. But Dennis, the idea of the question was from Alina, who's a parent of a Meadowlark 7th and a Cole kindergartner. Will teachers and supporting staff be provided with specialty masks clear for those that are working with deaf and hard of hearing? I know that's something that we definitely have.
Yeah, we definitely have them and a plan for that, as well as for students who might receive speech language services, especially around with students who have articulation needs, so that we can really have the mouse as visible as possible. But yes.
Stephanie, we got a comment on a question on Facebook regarding the science that shows that masks are effective. They question whether or not there's science out there that shows that. I know that I've seen studies, aerosol studies, and that kind of thing. Anything that you can add on that account before we close up here?
To mask being effective, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
And I'll just add, I know that there's some concerns as well in regards to maybe the concern that carbon dioxide is trapped inside the mask. I know that there's been studies on that as well. This is something that definitely kind of tends to be on social media a lot these days.
Yeah, we do see a lot of posts and questions and concerns around mask use. I have not seen any science that shows that somebody could be harmed by wearing a mask. In addition to that, our kiddos are going to be going outside and getting fresh air and getting breaks throughout the day. But the masks are, they're breathable. Obviously, we see lots of people. If you remember the public health presentation at the board meeting, upwards of 96% or so of folks that they're seeing around the county are wearing masks pretty regularly. And that is one of the most important things that we can do to stop the spread of virus. from people who are asymptomatic or who are symptomatic and just don't realize that they're sick yet, as well as protecting ourselves. They're even showing now that mask wearing can do some protection for us as well, which wasn't initially a thought. So,
Okay.
like Jeff Ziak has said, mask wearing and distancing and hand washing, the three most important things that we can do right now to keep our community safe.
And as we open our schools, staying home if you're sick, right? Like that's a hard thing,
Thank you.
especially when you
Yes.
have those symptoms that might be, we're definitely taking all this seriously right now. So.
Yes.
As I always do, and I want to just thank all of our panelists for staying so long on this call today. We're 15 minutes over the typical time. Just give you a last opportunity for everyone to say one last word if we've gotten something, want to fit it in here, or just have a parting thought. I'll start with where we began, Sam Messier.
I am just so excited that we're actually going to have kids back on campus starting next week. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait to get those kids back. And just so proud of all the work that our teachers and building administrators and clerical staff and custodial staff, everybody who's making this possible, all the work that they're doing.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. Rob Price.
Yeah, I want to just ditto Sam's comments. I really think everyone is excited for the 29th, about 7:45 a.m. so we can see our youngest families and learners come into the buildings. Also want to say thanks to our staff. You can see it in the background, our teachers, our custodial, our maintenance staff, everybody has been putting a lot of long hours in, working extremely hard. I would ask our community, I mean, I think we're doing a good job, but help us get the numbers down so we can get kids back in our building. And I do want to mention, a lot of free testing sites, and the district is also offering testing. Please get tested. The more we know, the better we'll be able to implement and get kids back in the building. So please take advantage of those free testing sites that Boulder County is offering right now. Thank you, Randy.
We did get a staff system that will actually about tomorrow. So thank you for bringing that up as well. Kim, speaking of youngest learners.
Yeah, we are so excited. I will tell you, most of the questions we get from families are really concerned about safety protocols. And I can tell you, as a mom of 3 kids, watching the incredible work that these schools are doing and preparing for your youngest learners, they will be safe. They're ready. Our environments are ready, and we are just ready to, welcome you with open arms, and just know that I myself would send my own personal children to school. Our environments are safe, and our teachers want those little ones back, what we call our littles, our babies back desperately. So we're looking forward to seeing you all next week.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. Stephanie Farron.
I think the last thing that I would like to say is, again, we are so excited, like everybody else has said, going over to Ryan the other day and seeing the room and just hearing staff talk about, how emotional they are already feeling about having students come back, how excited they are, is just really heartwarming. I also feel very strongly that we have good safety precautions in place. And I want to remind folks that every school has a school nurse that's available for questions. Please reach out to them. They can help you determine if your kiddo is too sick to come to school, or what they need to come back to school if they've been out, and can really help navigate a lot of the questions and things that are coming up. So please utilize those health resources in your schools as well.
Perfect. Dennis Restetter.
Yeah, first of all, the Wiggly seats are awesome. I could use one. That would be great. But just want to echo what everyone else has said, right? I am so excited to get our students with intensive needs, pre-K 12, back into some in-person services. I want to say thank you to our special ed teachers, our speech language pathologists, our OTs and PTs, and psych social workers, and our paraprofessionals. All of them coming together to help support the return of our students is going to make it a success. I am going to be out in buildings on Tuesday to say hi and greet kids. I just am over the moon excited to see kids again. I think, none of us got into this business not to be with kids, right? And so it just is so, so exciting to have that opportunity. So, yeah.
Thank you, Dennis. And finally, last but not least, but Margaret Crespo.
I'll make it very short. The same as everyone else has said. And I just want to take a minute and say thank you to our parents and to our community. You know, the reality is that you stuck with us. There are a lot of things that we've had to fall through and work together and mitigate. And the feedback that all of our parents have provided as they've stayed with us has really helped us form this plan, make sure that we're meeting the needs of your children. We recognize that this process is laborious and really time consuming, and we appreciate your patience and know that we have your best interest, your kids' safety, and always looking for that feedback for all of us. And just want to say from the bottom of our hearts how grateful we are for the amazing parents and community in BVSD. So thanks very much, Randy, for the opportunity, and have a great night.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you to all of our panelists. I just want to thank them for their time and their hard work. As all of them said, our staff has been amazing. Working crazy amounts of hours. Our teachers putting in endless hours to take care of students. This week there was a doodle from a fifth grade student that was about kindness, and I think that's an important thing for us all to remember in this super difficult time. I know that all of us are having difficulties. Struggling through the situation, and just know that folks are working very, very hard for our kids. And we cannot wait to be back together, BVSD. With that, I hope you have a great night. Thanks.